I was 7 months pregnant, carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs while my husband sat inside playing video games with his headset on. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Harper. I'm 29, and this is my first pregnancy. Every step up those stairs felt like climbing a mountain. My ankles were swollen, my back ached, and the weight of the bags cut into my hands so deep I could feel my pulse throbbing against the handles. I leaned against the wall halfway up, catching my breath, my belly pressing hard against the railing. The apartment was only a few feet away, but it felt like miles. When I finally reached the door, I heard Cole's voice before I even stepped inside. He was yelling into his headset, laughing with whoever he played with online. I stood there for a second, sweating, clutching bags that felt heavier than they should have. I waited, hoping maybe he would hear me struggling and come help. He didn't. I pushed the door open with my hip. Cole didn't turn around. He sat with the lights off, the screen glowing on his face, eyes locked on his game. "Babe," I said, my voice breaking a little. "Can you help me?" He waved one hand without looking away, like he was brushing off a fly. "In a minute," he muttered, then shouted something into his headset. I stood there in the dark hallway, groceries dangling from my hands, belly tight from the weight I carried, and I realized he wasn't going to get up. I set the bags down on the counter one by one, biting back tears. The silence between us felt louder than his game. I looked at him for a long moment, hoping he'd glance over, maybe smile, maybe notice how hard I was trying to hold everything together. But he didn't. His world was the glowing screen, not the woman standing behind him, carrying his child and groceries. I pressed my hand against my stomach. The baby kicked, like she was reminding me she was there, like she was saying, "You're not alone." That kick made the weight of Cole's indifference sink in even more. How could he be so close, yet feel so far away? I whispered, "I'm tired, Cole." "Yeah," he said without looking. "Me too." It was such a small moment, maybe even ordinary to some. But for me it was the first time I truly saw him. Not as my husband, not as the man I thought would protect me, but as someone who didn't care enough to stand up for me when I needed him most. I had always told myself he was stressed from work, that things would get better once the baby came. But standing there that night, my hands trembling from the weight of the bags, I felt invisible in my own marriage. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The changes started slowly, so faint I almost convinced myself they weren't real. Cole used to wrap his arm around me at night, his hand resting gently on my stomach as if he could already feel the life growing inside me. Then one evening, he rolled over without a word. The next night, the same. Before long, weeks passed where I slept with my back to him, waiting for the warmth that never came. He said work was draining him, that the pressure was heavier than usual. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the man I married was still there under the tired excuses. But I noticed the late hours, the way his key turned in the lock long after dinner had gone cold. He would shrug, kiss the top of my head without meeting my eyes, and head straight for the shower. It wasn't only the hours. His phone, once left on the counter without a thought, became glued to his side. If I reached for it to check the time, his shoulders tensed. Notifications came at strange hours, and he would tilt the screen away as if I wasn't supposed to see. The distance between us grew, not just in bed but in every conversation. The baby became another subject he avoided. I'd bring up names, little clothes I saw at the store, how strong the kicks were getting. His responses were flat, like polite nods in a conversation he wanted no part of. I laughed once, placing his hand on my stomach when the baby moved. He pulled away too quickly, muttering something about needing rest. Mara noticed before I even said a word. She always had a sharp eye, the kind that saw through excuses. One afternoon, she came over and caught me pushing food around my plate, my smile brittle. "He's not here for you, is he?" she asked. I tried to laugh it off, but my eyes gave me away. She leaned closer, her voice firm. "Harper, you can't let this slide. If he's shutting you out now, what do you think is going to happen once the baby's here? You need answers." Her words pressed against the wall I'd been building. I wanted to take her advice, to demand truth, but I wasn't ready to face it. My chest tightened at the thought of confrontation. I still clung to the image of the man who once kissed me goodnight, who once promised me forever. So I shook my head, whispered, "He's just stressed. Things will get better." "They have to." Mara didn't look convinced. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Don't fool yourself, Harp. Stress doesn't explain shutting out the woman carrying his child. I nodded, but inside I shoved her words deep down. Hope was all I had left, and I wasn't ready to let it go, even if it meant turning away from the cracks widening right in front of me. It happened on a Tuesday when I reached into Cole's jacket, looking for loose change. My fingers brushed against a folded slip of paper. I pulled it out, expecting gas or groceries, something ordinary. Instead, I stared at the neat print of a dinner receipt from a steakhouse I'd never been to, 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, dessert. The date printed at the bottom didn't match the nights he said he worked late. I tucked it back carefully, my hands shaking, my breath stuck in my throat. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A client dinner. A celebration with coworkers. Anything but what my mind whispered. Still, the image clung to me. Him sitting across from someone else, laughing in the warm light of a restaurant while I sat at home counting the kicks inside my belly. Days later, I caught another clue. I pressed his shirt to my face while folding laundry, and a scent clung to it, sweet, floral, unfamiliar. It wasn't my perfume. The smell wrapped around me, dizzying, and my chest tightened until I had to sit down. I buried the shirt at the bottom of the basket, as if hiding it could make the truth vanish. That night he stumbled in after midnight, keys jingling, hair damp, skin smelling faintly of soap. He tossed his gym bag into the corner and stretched, acting casual. "Long session," he said, dropping onto the couch, grabbing his phone like it had been waiting for him all day. Something inside me broke open, but no words came. I wanted to scream, to throw the receipt in his face, to demand he tell me why he smelled of flowers I didn't own. But the weight of my body kept me pinned, the heaviness of carrying not just a child, but also the fear of what life would be without him. My hands curled over my stomach, as if protecting the baby from what I knew but wouldn't say. I watched him scroll, the glow of the screen lighting up his face, and every instinct screamed that I was being lied to. The man in front of me was living another life somewhere I wasn't allowed to go. But I stayed silent, because silence felt safer than hearing the truth spoken out loud. The apartment felt smaller that night, the air heavy with the scent of soap that wasn't his, the memory of the receipt in my pocket, the image of him smiling across a table at someone else. My heart beat so hard I thought he might hear it. But he never looked up, and I sat there, paralyzed, trapped between the woman I used to be and the mother I was about to become, knowing something was deeply wrong and terrified to face it head-on. Mara wasn't willing to let me keep pretending. One evening, after another excuse from Cole about working late, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Get your coat. We're going to see where he really is." Her tone left no room for argument. My legs felt weak, but I followed her out the door, clutching my stomach as if the baby could sense the storm building inside me. We parked near the row of restaurants downtown, the kind of places with warm lighting spilling out of tall windows and couples leaning close over polished tables. Mara kept her eyes fixed ahead, jaw set, while I trembled beside her. My palms were damp against my knees. Minutes crawled by until I saw him. Cole stepped out of his car, dressed sharper than I'd seen in months, pressed shirt, clean shave, shoes shining under the streetlight. He didn't look like the tired man who came home to me. He looked alive, energized, like someone on his way to meet someone who mattered. He walked inside one of the restaurants and Mara's hand squeezed mine. "Come on," she whispered, leading me closer until we could see through the glass. I wished I hadn't looked. At a corner table sat Cole, leaning forward, eyes locked on a woman across from him. She was striking, dark hair falling in loose waves, her smile soft but knowing. I recognized her from a photo he once showed me, a colleague named Elena. A candle flickered between them, casting a glow over their faces. I froze when she reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. He didn't pull away. He laughed, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in months, and for a second, his whole face lit up. The way he looked at her was unmistakable, tender, open, the kind of look I used to believe was mine alone. My chest caved in. The world around me blurred, cars passing, voices drifting from the street, all swallowed by the sight of his hand resting beneath hers. I pressed my palm against my stomach, feeling the faint stir of movement inside, a tiny life that belonged to both of us. But while I carried his child, he was out here building moments with someone else. Mara whispered something, her voice low and sharp, but I couldn't hear her. My ears rang with the sound of his laughter, the picture of him leaning closer to Elena, his shoulders relaxed, his smile easy. That smile cut deeper than any words could have. I turned away, unable to watch anymore, tears spilling hot down my cheeks. I had spent months hoping I was wrong, hoping the unease twisting inside me was nothing more than nerves. But there it was, plain as day, proof that the man I thought was my partner was already halfway gone. And I was left clutching both my belly and my broken heart in the dark. I waited until the apartment was quiet, the weight of what I'd seen pressing so hard on my chest I could hardly breathe. Cole was on the couch, scrolling through his phone, acting like everything was normal. My voice shook as I said his name, sharper than I meant. He looked up, startled, and I stood there with tears already burning my eyes. "Where were you tonight?" I asked. My throat felt raw. "And don't say work, because I know you weren't there." His face didn't flicker, not even for a second. He leaned back, arms crossing over his chest, cool as if I'd just asked about the weather. "Harper, you're imagining things again. You've been so emotional lately." I stepped closer, hands trembling. "I saw you. I saw her. Don't lie to me." My voice cracked, but I didn't care. He sighed loudly, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You're 7 months pregnant, Harp. Your hormones are all over the place. You think you see things that aren't there. You twist everything into something it's not." The floor felt like it tilted under me. "I know what I saw," I whispered, my cheeks wet now. That's when his tone sharpened, his words turning into knives. "You've been impossible lately. Always complaining, always needing something. You've changed, Harper. You're not the same woman I married. Look at yourself. When's the last time you even tried?" I stared at him, stunned. My body, swollen and aching from carrying his child, suddenly felt exposed under his gaze, like he saw me as nothing but a burden. "You let yourself go," he added coldly, shaking his head. "It's not attractive. Do you think anyone would want to come home to that?" Each word sliced deeper, leaving me breathless. I pressed my hands over my stomach, not for comfort, but to remind myself why I was standing there, why I couldn't just collapse to the floor. Tears blurred everything, but beneath the ache, something new stirred, a heat sharp and steady. His cruelty lit a fire I hadn't felt before. For the first time, I didn't just feel broken. I felt angry. I took a step back, swallowing the sobs that threatened to spill out. My voice came out low, shaking but steady enough. "You don't get to do this to me. Not anymore." He rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath, but I saw it, the flicker of unease in his expression, the quick dart of his eyes. He didn't expect me to push back. Inside me, the rage kept growing, pushing against the pain, burning away the fog of denial I'd been clinging to. He wanted me to believe I was crazy, that my body and mind were the problem. But I knew better now. And though my heart was shattered, I felt something stronger than despair rise up. It was the beginning of fight. The basket was piled high, heavier than I should have tried to manage, but the laundry needed doing, and no one else was going to do it. I gripped the sides, hauling it step by step up the stairwell, my back screaming with each lift. By the second flight, my breath came in short bursts, sweat running down my temples. On the third landing, my knee buckled, and the whole load tipped. Socks and shirts spilled across the floor as I went down hard against the wall, clutching my stomach in panic. I stayed there on the cold concrete, gasping, the sting of tears in my eyes, praying the baby hadn't been hurt. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out everything else. Then I heard footsteps. Cole appeared at the top of the stairs, looked down at me slumped on the landing, then stepped past without breaking stride. "You should be more careful," he said flatly, not slowing, not even glancing back. A door clicked shut at the end of the hall, leaving me alone with the scattered clothes and the ache spreading through my body. In that moment, something inside me shifted. He didn't see me as his wife anymore, or the mother of his child. To him, I was just another chore, another mess on the stairs. Whatever love we once had vanished into indifference. I stayed there until I could pull myself up, gathering what I could back into the basket, though it felt heavier now than ever. By the time I reached the apartment, my hands shook so badly I dropped half the pile on the floor again. Cole was already in the bedroom, door shut, his voice muffled as he spoke into the phone. The next day, Mara showed up. She took one look at me, my limp, my red eyes, the bruises forming on my arms, and her jaw tightened. "That's it," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "I'm staying. He clearly won't step up, so I will." I wanted to protest, to tell her I'd manage, but the words stuck. The truth was I couldn't. Not anymore. Mara dragged her bag inside, setting it by the couch like she belonged there. She moved through the space with sharp eyes, noting the unwashed dishes stacked high, the empty beer bottles by the sink, the silence from the closed bedroom door. That night, She made dinner while I sat at the table, still sore from the fall. She didn't ask questions, she didn't need to. She saw everything, the neglect, the loneliness, the way Cole barely emerged except to grab a plate and retreat again. And as much as it hurt, I felt a flicker of relief. Someone else finally witnessed the truth I'd been living with. Someone besides me knew just how far gone he really was. I started collecting anything that could prove what I'd suspected, little by little and in secret. Slip after slip went into a shoebox, dinner tabs, hotel invoices, credit card printouts with places and times that didn't match his story. I took pictures of messages when I could, screenshots saved under misleading file names, so he wouldn't find them if he glanced at my phone. I opened a file at the bank and printed out statements showing transfers and odd charges. Each piece felt like a weight off my chest, and a nail in a case I wasn't ready to announce yet. I learned to move quietly through our life, watching his patterns without him knowing I was watching. I made duplicates of documents and hid originals at Mara's place. At night, I sorted the evidence at the kitchen table, arranging dates and amounts into neat stacks. The more I organized, the more my fear hardened into resolve. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about protecting the child who would need a stable home and someone who would put them first. Mara stayed close, a steady presence who never asked for details but knew enough to stiffen her jaw. She pushed me when my courage faltered. One afternoon, she handed me the card of an attorney she trusted, someone straightforward and blunt, and used to dealing with people who lied when it was convenient. I called on a Thursday while Cole was out, my voice low, and scheduled a meeting for the following week. Sitting across from the attorney was unnerving at first. He listened without interruption as I laid out the timeline, sliding the shoebox evidence across the table. He skimmed through, nodding, and for the first time since everything began, I felt that someone else could see the pattern as clearly as I did. He explained the options in a language that was both practical and blunt: custody, support, division of assets, and most importantly, timing. He told me what I already suspected: moving too soon could backfire. Patience now would buy me stronger protection later. He advised I delay formal action until after the baby arrived. That was a bitter pill to swallow. I had wanted immediate justice, an instant cutoff of the man who'd been lying beside me. But the attorney painted the advantages plainly. Once the child was legally mine and named, I'd have clearer standing for custody. Financial claims would be stronger with documented needs for the newborn. Rushing in could leave me exposed legally and emotionally. The counsel didn't feel like surrender, it felt like strategy. Leaving his office, I felt different, less like a frightened woman and more like someone with a plan. I started preparing in practical ways. Organizing medical records, documenting missed contributions and absences, cataloging every instance of abandonment I could remember. I made lists of witnesses, neighbors, co-workers, anyone who could corroborate his neglect. Mara helped me draft emails to myself that compiled dates and events so they would be time-stamped. It was tedious and clinical, but it steadied me. That cold, methodical work did something to my fear. It turned it into a tool. I wasn't going to be broken by what he'd done. I would use the truth, the paper trail, and the law to build a future for my child. I promised myself I would not be surprised into ruin. I would wait, gather, and then move with precision. The moment to strike would come, and when it did, I intended to be the one holding all the cards. The pain started sooner than anyone expected. One moment I was folding tiny clothes Mara had washed for me, and the next I was doubled over, gripping the edge of the couch as sharp waves rolled through my body. My breath came fast, uneven, and fear spread through me. Mara didn't hesitate. She grabbed the bag we'd packed weeks earlier, threw her keys in her pocket, and half-carried me down the stairs. The drive blurred into flashes of red lights and clenched fists. Mara's voice anchored me, steady and urgent, telling me to breathe, to hold on, to keep focused. At the hospital, nurses rushed me into a room, voices overlapping, machines beeping. Between contractions, I begged for my husband, reaching for my phone with shaking hands. Call after call rang without an answer. Mara tried too, pacing by the door, her jaw tight. Hours dragged while I labored, sweat soaking my hair, my throat hoarse from crying out. Every time the door opened, I hoped it was him. It never was. By the time Cole finally appeared, I was cradling our newborn against my chest, exhausted and raw. His expression wasn't relief or joy. It was irritation, as though my timing had inconvenienced him. He muttered something about his battery dying, slipped his phone out, and without asking, angled it toward us. The shutter clicked. He smiled for the camera, not for me or the child in my arms. I searched his face for warmth, for pride, for anything that told me he saw what had just happened. Nothing. He posted himself near the bed for a short while, tapping at his phone, sighing when the nurse asked him to step aside. Then, just as quietly as he had come, he left. No kiss, no promise, no lingering touch. The room felt heavier after the door closed. Mara sat close, her hand on my shoulder, her eyes full of the tenderness I ached for. But even her presence couldn't fill the hollow space where my husband should have been. I looked down at the tiny face nestled against me, so small and yet so certain, her breathing soft and steady. Tears slid down my cheeks, but they weren't the same tears I'd cried before. This time, they carried something sharper. In that moment, I understood. I couldn't rely on him. Whatever future I carved out, it would be for her and me, not for him. The loneliness was crushing, but when her fingers curled weakly around mine, I felt a surge of strength I hadn't known I still possessed. She was the reason to keep going, the reason to fight every battle ahead. As the machines hummed and the hallway noises faded, I whispered a promise against her tiny ear. You'll never feel as abandoned as I do right now. And for the first time in months, I meant every word. I kept my silence in the weeks that followed, moving carefully, smiling just enough to keep suspicion away. While he drifted in and out of the apartment, half involved, half gone, I met with the attorney, signed pages that marked the end of us, and tucked copies into folders no one but me and Mara touched. The paperwork was stamped and sealed before he had any idea a storm was coming. We chose the timing with precision. The process server found him in the middle of a Tuesday morning, when his office was full, when Elena sat across the hall with a stack of files. Cole had just stepped out of a meeting, laughing at something she said, when the man walked up and handed him the envelope. The laughter died instantly. Heads turned as he flipped through the papers, his expression shifting from confusion to panic. Elena leaned over his shoulder, eyes scanning the words, her face paling as she understood. The room buzzed with whispers. Every hidden expense, every dinner, every transfer I had tracked was listed in neat order. The neglect during my pregnancy was documented, the witness accounts attached, the bank records laid bare. There was no twisting it, no dismissing it as my imagination this time. The truth was on official letterhead, stamped and signed undeniable. Cole tried to smooth it over, I was told later. He pulled Elena aside, lowering his voice, hands gesturing wildly as he insisted it wasn't as bad as it looked. But she saw the numbers, the mounting debts he'd hidden, the money drained from accounts to cover nights out and hotel stays. She saw the mess behind the charm. By the end of the week, word spread around his office. The man who once carried himself with authority now walked the halls with shoulders hunched, whispers following wherever he went. He avoided the break room, avoided meetings, avoided the looks that told him his secrets weren't secret anymore. Elena didn't last much longer. I heard through Mara's network that she cut ties quickly, no farewell scene, no lingering loyalty. She realized what I had already learned. The promises he made were empty, and the life he offered was nothing more than a house of cards waiting to collapse. For me, the victory wasn't in his downfall, though it was satisfying. It was in the quiet strength of knowing I had outmaneuvered him, that I had turned his lies into the very tools that dismantled his facade. While he scrambled to salvage his reputation, I held my daughter close, secure in the knowledge that the future he tried to deny me was now mine to shape. The revenge wasn't loud or messy. It was precise, measured, and undeniable. He had gambled on my silence, on my dependence, and lost everything he thought he controlled. And I walked away holding not just freedom, but proof that I was stronger than he ever imagined. The months that followed felt like stepping into a new life, one I hadn't thought possible while I was still under his shadow. My days revolved around the small heartbeat I'd carried for so long, now warm in my arms, eyes wide and curious. Sleepless nights were softened by Mara's steady presence. She rocked the baby when my arms ached, cooked meals when I forgot to eat, and filled the apartment with laughter when silence threatened to creep back in. We built a rhythm together, one rooted in care and respect, everything I had been missing before. Papers finalized, accounts settled, the past was no longer something I had to tiptoe around. Cole had tried to call, his number flashing across the screen in the early weeks, messages left half angry, half pleading. When those went unanswered, he showed up once, knocking at the door with the kind of desperation that once might have pulled me back. Mara stood by my side as I opened just wide enough to face him. His words came fast, excuses stacked on top of apologies, promises dripping like honey but sour underneath. He said he missed me, said he wanted to see his child, said we could start over. But his eyes gave him away. What he missed wasn't love or family, but control. I listened without a word, then closed the door, the lock clicking between us. His footsteps faded down the hall, and I knew he had no place in the life I was building. Days stretched into seasons, my daughter growing stronger, her laughter brightening every corner of our home. Mara became more than a friend. She was family, filling spaces he had abandoned. Together, we created a world where safety and joy weren't fleeting. Each milestone, each giggle, each new word reminded me I had chosen the right path. One evening, while folding clothes still warm from the dryer, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. Tired, yes, but steady, my shoulders no longer weighed down by fear. The memory rose unbidden, me swollen with pregnancy, hauling bags up those endless stairs while he sat feet away, oblivious. The image used to sting, but now it made me smile. That night hadn't been just pain. It had been a beginning, the spark that forced me to see clearly. What once felt like breaking had turned into rebuilding. I had stepped through fire, carrying not only myself but the small life that depended on me, and I had come out stronger. The groceries, the stares, the silence, they were no longer symbols of loneliness, but of the moment I began claiming my own strength. I kissed my daughter's forehead, inhaling the soft scent of her hair, and whispered a quiet thank you. To her, to Mara, even to the struggle that had forged me. The story wasn't about him anymore. It was about us, and about the power I never knew I carried until I was forced to climb those stairs alone. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away, or should I have given him another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories.